Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there. It is Thursday night on Patsy Development Hour on WhatsApp Radio. So tonight we are talking about black children have an identity crisis in the United Kingdom. Tonight we've got a special guest, Mr. George Mayer, who is an educationist and a social worker. Where now we've got Mr. George Mayer, education, social worker, decade we'll be talking about our black children have an identity crisis in the United Kingdom. George Mayer is a graduate of University of Ghana and currently holds an MA from the Open University with a long-standing experience in education and safeguarding. Currently working with children's services for the London Borough of London, and also she's passionate about developing the next generation leaders and want to support young people to achieve both in the secular world and also in the church. So we've got a fine young man, George Mayer, who is passionate about the younger generation. And who can we talk about? Our black children have an identity crisis. So tonight, Mr. George Mayer, good evening and very special welcome on WhatsApp Radio. So tonight we are on Patsy Development Hour discussing our black children have an identity crisis. So, Mr. Mayer, a very warm welcome to you tonight.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So tonight it is all about our children. We know we want the best for our children and we want the best for the millennials and also those who are coming along. So tonight we want to discuss with a fine man who is passionate about youngsters, the young generation, what they can do. And he both works with the secular world and also in the churches to help our young people to grow to be the best version of themselves. So tonight, because of time, we've got an hour, so we will just kick in with the first question. The first question is, identity is a dictionary, in the dictionary means that the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. Identity can mean different things to different people. It might be about who you hang out with, what music you listen to, where you live, and what ethnicity you are. Simply put it, your identity is who you are. However, sometimes you can feel confused about your identity, and this can cause feelings of isolation and loneliness. So tonight we are going to give all the parents out there tips to help our children to be the best version of ourselves. So the first question, Mr. Mayer, do you think our children are being confused by identity due to their upbringing from their parents, or they are struggling to understand the British society?
Thank you very much for the question. First and foremost, you defined identity, but I'm not sure you defined identity crisis.
Okay, good.
And even with identity, you can talk about identity in terms of gender, culture, religion, language, beliefs, personality type, whether you are introvert or extrovert, even age. At my age now, I regard myself as a middle-aged man. You introduced me as a young man.
Well, age is only a number.
Yes. In fact, recently you'd have heard in the news, the Queen declined an honor about being one of the oldies in the country. She said, no, she's not old.
Great
Even
stuff.
at her age, you know. But yes, let's see whether we can agree on some working definition of an identity crisis. In a way, you mentioned the confusion that people have about their identity. If you look at it from that angle, then yes, some of our children do experience that confusion in identity. They cannot really place themselves either here or there, that is back home. They do not really know where they belong. But for children of a certain age, it is part of the developmental process, especially that period we call adolescence. Young people go through a conflict because they are not really children and they are not yet adults. But we expect them to take on certain responsibilities at that age. And yet we want to treat them as children. And it creates a certain internal conflict in their minds. So yes, there are those who experience this identity crisis, particularly living in this culture. And you see it manifest in the kind of attitudes that they adopt, the kind of associations that they form. You'll find that they kind of fall into the wrong kind of associations and drop out of education, hang out with the wrong crowd, get into, antisocial activity, crime, drugs, gangs, knife crime, gun crime, and things like that, giving Black people a sort of bad press and creating a certain perception about young Black people, which is quite negative. But I will not paint all Black kids with the same brush, because for those who go through that kind of experience, there are a lot more Black children who are well behaved and focused on education and are keeping their head down and working towards becoming somebody. They have aspirations for themselves. They are excelling in their education. They are excelling in sports. They are excelling in various aspects of life. And they are headed towards a certain destination. But we don't hear much about them in the news. It is those who find themselves on the wrong side of the law who give a certain impression about young Black kids who happen to get into the news. And that is why you will find that, for example, the young Black person in hoodie is more likely to be stopped and searched by the police than his white counterpart also in a hoodie. But there are a lot more. And in fact, I'll say that they are even in the majority who are working hard, keeping their heads down, working towards a purpose, doing their education, going to university, and top university. Sometimes when I visit schools, I look on their achievement board and I see displayed the achievements of Black kids in their GCSEs and their A levels, and where they move on to, the universities that they go to. You'll find there is a preponderance of, Russell Group universities, and they are doing top courses and getting into the professions after university. So it's not all doom and gloom. I wouldn't say so.
Great stuff. So you've mentioned we've got a lot of Black kids who have got aspirations, who are coming out and doing well. And I know some of these kids are really, we've got architects, we've got medical doctors, we've got accountants. So it's just a few bad apples that spoils the whole thing. And unfortunately, because we are the minority, is labeled out big,
Yes.
and it stands out
And somehow they get the publicity.
yes, yes. So, what are some of the aspects of our culture that can lead to this identity crisis in our children? I know you've mentioned a few.
You mean our culture here in the UK?
Yes. Well, because most of the parents have really grown up in Ghana and they've moved up here. And so they are
Yes.
trying to, as you said, mix the culture of here, and the kids are, as you're saying earlier on, their attitude change because we sometimes try to train them or talk to them as if they are young. And also we expect them to have certain responsibilities. Can you talk a bit about that? I'm really interested in that bit.
Yes, you will find that this society is more liberal when it comes to certain attitudes, like attitudes towards sex, for example. Whereas in our culture, certain things will be a taboo. Here, it's permitted. There's a lot of permissiveness and liberalism. And of late, you will find that with the decline in Judeo-Christian values upon which this nation was founded, things are getting more and more secularized. So you'll find that children, unlike the way we were brought up back home in Africa or in Ghana, there isn't that much reverence for age and for authority. Recently, a friend of mine posted something on Facebook and asked the question whether when we were children, we could talk back to our parents. And I responded, "Who born dog?" We had a good laugh. But, the way we were brought up is not the way that we are bringing up our children here. Children are more bold, assertive.
They speak their mind.
Yes, they can speak their mind. They know their rights. They can express themselves more freely. It has its advantages, but it also brings with it certain challenges when it comes to, for example, managing certain types of behavior. Parents have less control to manage certain types of behavior. Within this society, children enjoy a lot more autonomy. They have more say in matters that relate to their own well-being. And I'm saying this also as a social work practitioner, because part of the ethic by which we have to work is to listen to the views of the child. The child has a voice, and that voice must be heard. Back home in Ghana, when we were growing up, a child was to be seen, but not necessarily heard. You had to be where you had to be, but you didn't really have a voice. But in this society, children do have a voice, and they know they do have a voice, and they can speak freely.
Perfect. So, a young lady, Vanessa YD, has said, especially Black children from African heritage, they are doing extremely well with what you said earlier on. So,
Yes.
thank you, Vanessa, for posting that on Facebook. And Mr. Yata said a vivid exposition on the challenges faced by parents raising their children in the UK. And it's so
Yes.
important because I've got children who are in that age who are finished universities. And the problem is the challenges we face is, as you're saying, in our generation, as you just literally put it, who'd born dog by mistake. You cannot talk back to your parents. You
Yes.
cannot, whatever you're told, you just do it as it is. But here,
Yes.
because they've got a voice, they will talk back. How do we really allow them to talk back, but in a polite way, whereby parents don't feel offended and kids also feel that I've got my right, but I have to say something? How do we put it? Because it's a really a very challenging point for parents in the UK.
I'm going to wear two hats here, both as a professional and as a parent.
Mhm.
Um, one of the key sort of ethics of our profession is the need to listen. Listen to the child. And it is born out of a certain notion that even a baby can express itself and tell you what it needs. You have to be sensitive and listen. But I also think that as parents, we need to model good, positive communication amongst ourselves so that our children learn, they pick up those signals, those aspects of positive communication between adults. The way we treat our partners and listen to each other, it drills down to to our children.
Great stuff. So this young
So
lady has put
we
down.
need to model positive modes of communication, active listening. Have the time and patience to listen to each other and respond appropriately. It requires these days what we call emotional intelligence. You know, part of the problem I find with children who lose their way is that there is a family breakdown somewhere along the line. And it gives rise to single parents, absence of male role models for young black kids to pick up, certain values, certain ways of comporting or behaving yourself in public and in private. And it's a real problem. But like I said, and maybe that's where some of you come in with your mentoring projects and things like that. We need more of such approaches.
Yes, I think definitely think so because
Yes.
Vanessa has put on the Facebook again. A lot of Ghanaian parents are not willing to listen to their children, and that's lack that communication. So you've just hit the nail there.
Yes.
So lack of communication is a biggest issue. So
Yes. It reminds me of a survey that was done by an American university about how many lies young people tell. And the findings were that young people tell more lies to themselves, to their colleagues, less lies to their teachers, less lies to their mothers, and hardly any lies to their fathers. And can you guess the reason why?
what's the reason?
Because the fathers are not there to be talked to. So if the father is not there, you cannot even speak truth or lies. But it highlights a social problem, the breakdown of the family unit and absentee fathers.
Great stuff. You've really touched on a very solid point, absentee fathers. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back shortly. 2 minutes quick break because I'm really enjoying myself and I don't want to miss the absentee father. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening on Patsy Development Hour on WhatsApp Radio. Tonight we are discussing our Black children have an identity crisis in the United Kingdom. And we spoke a lot about children having responsibilities and yet we want to treat them as children. They have some kind of attitudes that we need to really work out it. Some of them have got antisocial behavior, but yet we've got people who have got aspirations and they are doing well. They are all going to the Russell University, Russell Group of Universities. Some of them are doing well. And we are just hitting about family breakdown, which really bring a lot of this identity crisis on our youngsters. So tonight we've got Mr. Mayor here, who is going to really, teaching us few things that we need. And he's saying that we need all the men to listen to this because most of the children communicate with their mothers more than their fathers. And why is that? The reason is the men are not there. So if you've got a brother, an uncle, a father out there, can you tune in and call them to tune in to listen to what Mr. Mayor is saying? So Mr. Mayor, before we took a quick break, you were saying about the men not being there. Can you really put a bit of armor on
Yes.
that, please?
I was making the point that we need men to take up their fatherly roles and be involved in the upbringing of their kids. We need the family unit to hold together. I mean, available studies shows that the best condition necessary for any child to thrive is in a functioning family with both parents present, the mother, the father, both parents present and putting their effort together to nurture and bring up the child. That child is more likely to flourish. It doesn't mean that a child from a single parent family cannot flourish. No, but the likelihood or the chances are better where both parents are present. So it is something that is crucial if we are going to resolve some of these problems.
Great stuff. So tonight the studio number is 0208 144 8773 or 208 144 8773. Please call and give. Now we've got absentee fathers. We are talking about absentee fathers. So my next question was, what can we do to make sure that these men who are absentees, they can really take up their role? Because it's important, because at the end of the day, this cascades down to society and we get the black children being labeled. What can you tell the black men to do to help our children to become the best version of themselves?
Irrespective of whether they are staying with the mothers of their children, they should be actively involved in the nurturing and upbringing of their children. They should support them with their education, spend time with them, not only taking them to play football, but pay attention to the sort of homework that they bring. Help them to do homework, sit with them, read to them at an early age, tell them bedtime stories, form that bond with them so that they know that, yes, that's my father. And I have a relationship with him. And have expectations, high expectations of your children, and show them that you believe in them and that you expect them to turn out better than you even turned out. These are simple things that we can do, but we need to be actively involved in the nurturing and training and upbringing of our children at every stage until they can fly on their own.
Great stuff. So if there are men listening out there, be part of the nurturing of your children. That will help your children to be the best version of themselves and really have good aspiration for your children. That it is so important that we have both families. We can have both families there, but it's only one person doing the job. That does not cut it. Both of them.
And just one little point to add to it. Allow your children to discover their passions, their interests, their likes, their strengths, and encourage them along that path. When we were growing up, our fathers determined that this, my son, you should become a doctor or a lawyer. Times have changed. And every child comes with a certain potential. So you might want your child to end up in a certain profession, but allow the children to discover themselves. Find their own potential, their passion, their talents, and support that aspect of their lives so that it would flourish and develop. You never know where they will end up. These days, if I was told that somebody will be earning about £250 to £500,000 a week for kicking a football about 50 years back, I'll not believe it. But it's happening. So
the days that parents beat their children for playing football outside.
Yes, but not everybody can end up that way. So it's important that we encourage our children to commit to formal education, get the best out of it, And with that, you can't really go wrong. Yes, if you choose to play football, your working life is relatively short. By the age of 30, 35, you are fading out of the game. So not everybody can reach the heights that some people have reached, and they are earning £500,000 a week. Let's be mindful of that.
Great stuff. So tonight is all being about our children identity crisis. But what I'm hearing is parents play a critical role for our children if they are to get to where they need to get to. Both parents need to play a critical role, not just the mother's nurturing. The fathers out there, you need to be nurturing your children, reading their storybooks at night, being there with them, not just taking them to football, but making sure they understand and you nurture them. Nurturing is not just putting food on the table for them, but really having interest in whatever they are doing in every stage of life. Thank you so much. So, what can Black parents do to support their children to resolve some of the issues children are facing in the school due to the identity labels that they've been given?
Say again, your mic is a little,
Okay, can you hear me
yeah,
now? Yeah.
it's faint.
Is it faint? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm saying, I'm asking is, what can Black parents do to support their children to resolve some of the issues children face in school due to the identity or labels that they've been placed on Black children by society?
That's an interesting one. Um, I'm not sure what labels you are referring to. If you can give me an example
Some
of,
of the labels are Black, as you've already said. Some of the labels, as you said, as soon as they see somebody in a hood, there's an issue. When
yeah,
boys go to school with their hair cut low, they get an issue. These are some of the issues.
yes. I think that what we can do as Black people to change that sort of perception that other ethnic groups have about us is to begin to keep our children well grounded in terms of the way they think, the way they behave, the way they respond to, for example, instructions, the way they articulate themselves. There is a certain manner with which you can articulate yourselves in an assertive way without necessarily being disrespectful or cocky or arrogant. And we need to model some of these patterns of behavior to them so that they know how to communicate. They know how to express themselves in a certain polite way, even if they are expressing an objection. They know how to do it in a way that will not cause offense. We need to keep our children well grounded in their roots so that they can take pride in themselves as Africans, as people of Black descent. They can celebrate their heritage and know that they have a rich heritage. They can go about with a positive sense of self and good self-esteem. If children have good self-esteem and they are confident and they are competent and they are managing the challenges of education well, they are not likely to get into trouble with school authorities and get excluded and miss out on education and things like that. They would be better able to manage a smoother transition along the stages of their education. So we need to give our children the confidence to develop and to form aspirations for themselves, high aspirations. And like I said earlier, we also need to have expectations for our children. Another thing that we need to do is to believe in them. Let them know that we value them and we believe in them. We have confidence in their capabilities and their abilities to excel, and point out to them that they have potential that shouldn't go to waste, and encourage them in their chosen areas, in the pathway that they choose for themselves, so long as it's not going to harm them in the end, but they will end up becoming people of significance. Yes, encourage your children. The Bible says, parents, train your children in the Lord. That's in the New Testament, in Colossians. Do not exasperate them. You know what the word exasperate means? Where you are always on their case, putting pressure on them to the point where they give up on themselves. That's a very bad place to be. So our children need encouragement to develop confidence, good self-esteem, good self-worth, so that they know that they are valued. Even when they take a knock, they can have the resilience to bounce back and carry on from where they fell. These are some of the things that we should aim as doing as parents and even as communities. Because as Africans, we have a sort of communal approach to things. Growing up, every adult was uncle or auntie. It's a strength in our way of life, so that you always had someone to look to within the family, look up to within the family. There was an uncle who could put an arm around you during your low moments, if your mom or your dad was not there, or an auntie. That is what we should be to our kids. We should preserve that communal spirit. A child needs not only a family, but a clan, a tribe, a community within which to thrive. So we need to have that sense of community and that solidarity with ourselves. These are some of the things that can turn the tide and change the perception and get our children well grounded.
Lexio Hans says, tell Uncle Mayor that young fathers like us need him to console us. So whatever you are saying is really speaking to the men out there who are listening, that we really need to be able to be all-rounded to really support our children and make them what they need to be by our support, making sure we give them a stable environment. And as we live in communities, we should be helping each other to making our children more assertive, more also respectable, and also having confidence in our children so that they can become the true version of themselves. But thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for all the tips and nuggets that you've given us today. It's really brilliant. I'm just going to take a quick break, and when I come back, we've got less than 14 minutes. The show will be over. It's the hour has just gone quick. So we really need to bring you back because this is a topic that we need to be talking more about. Because if we want to see our Black children coming out to be the true version of themselves, we need to be teaching this in our community. So just a short break and Hello, hello, hello. Good evening on Patsy Development Hour on WhatsApp Radio. Tonight, it is all about our Black children having identity crisis. And Mr. Mayor has really given us a lot of nuggets and tips that nurturing our children will really help them to be the best version of themselves. So tonight, if you are not listening, please make sure you go to Facebook Live and give your comment as well. As I said, the studio number is 0208 Please call in with your comments. If something that you don't understand or is really helping you tonight, please call the studio for us to hear your voice. So as we move on, I know that some of our children are facing a lot of mental health issues due to one form all the things that how are we going to, you know, some of these things are not just parents. Some of these things are inequalities in the workplace, inequalities of prejudice in the school. When children are stigmatized, they get all this mental health issues. As a social worker, what advice can we give parents and what signs should we be watching for when kids are falling by the wayside, be it mental health, be it any other issue that is really affecting them?
Again, your mic is faint. I didn't get the last bit of your question.
Okay. So what I was saying was um, some of our children experience racism, discrimination, and prejudice. This can be in the community or in the school. This can lead to inequalities and issues in accessing appropriate care and support. So, where there are many, how can we really help these children as a social worker? What tips can you give to parents for them to watch?
Matters of discrimination are a societal issue, and as people of black descent living in a foreign country, we cannot be exempt
Mhm.
from its effects, but we can wire into our children the resilience to be able to cope and overcome and bounce back from the effects of such a challenge. And it goes back to what I was saying. So long as our children are well grounded, they are confident in themselves, they are deep in their roots, and they are proud of their African heritage and know their own self-worth. Nothing can sweep them off their feet. I have an example that I use when I'm working with young people who feel hurt and feel abused and discriminated against and treated badly. I pick a coin, a pound coin. I throw it on the floor. I step on it, kick it about, and pick it back up again and ask them, what do I have in my hand? They say a pound coin. I said, yes, your life is like this pound coin. People can step on you. They can kick you about like I did to the coin, but your value does not change. It doesn't change your value. So long as you know who you are and your value and your worth, you will not be affected to the point where you get discouraged and you withdraw. And that is why I keep saying that we need to nurture our children to develop the confidence, the self-worth, the self-esteem by tips that I've already given. Believe in them, support their aspirations, listen to their concerns, offer them solutions when they come to you looking for answers to questions that nag their minds. Tell them about their origins, where they come from, how far we have traveled as a people. Our history is very, very, very important. Not only for periods such as this, when we celebrate Black History Month, that's a token. We need our children to understand our history, where we have come from, and not only about the slave trade and the harm that it did. There are positive aspects of our history, glorious aspects of our history that we need to celebrate. For example, do you know that there's an African country which has never been colonized by any European power? Do you know that? That country is called Ethiopia. No European power has ever colonized it. In fact, they did defeat Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, an African country. You know, we have so much been conditioned to the history of the harm and the injury that has been done by the slave trade to the point where we feel inferior. But there are glorious aspects of our history that need to be projected and told to our children so that they feel proud that, yes, Africa also has a glorious past. It's not been all doom and gloom. There was a period that the richest man in the world was in Africa. Do you know his name? His name is Mansa Musa. He had so much gold. Even his horses were tied to gold, you know. He was the richest man in the world. Before institutions of learning such as Oxford and Cambridge, we had the University of Timbuktu. So yes, we have a glorious past. Sometimes I look at some of the things that they teach and project during the Black History Month, and it is so dilute. But we have a rich history, which we need our children to know so that they grow up with a greater sense of pride, and know the contribution that Africans have also made to the world and to its culture and to even thought, the intellectual world. Do you know that there was an African called, in fact, he was from Ghana. His name was Anton William Amu, who taught philosophy and theology in 2 German universities in the 18th century. You know, our children need to know stuff like that. It's not only in the field of entertainment and sports that Africans have excelled. No. We need to tell them about some of these things so that they are aware and they can also bear their chest out and hold their heads high that, yes, we are Africans, we are Ghanaians, we are Nigerians.
Great stuff. So it's really been a pleasure, and I've learned so much tonight. We've got barely about 5-6 minutes before we finish. What I'm hearing from you is we need to let the children know where they are coming from.
Yes.
And how can we do that? how can we, most of the rich stuff that you've shared today, the rich history, how do we bring it out for these children to know? Because a lot of these are not taught in the schools. How can some of us be really not having just Black History Month, but having an everyday Black month that we will be teaching our children the things that you are teaching us today? Like Mensa Musa, head Mensa Musa. I never knew he was the richest man on earth. So some of these things, how can we really be able to cascade it around for people to really?
First, we need to educate ourselves. Yes, so that we are, as the older generation as parents, we are ourselves apprised about some of these facts from history. We need to study our own past, not from the angle from which we've been taught, but from the voice of African writers themselves. We need to be familiar with some of our own folklore and literature, and the some of the the symbolisms behind our idiomatic expressions, things like that. And speak to our children in our own local dialects and explain certain things to them. Yes, the medium of instruction here is English, and we need to master the English language. But we should not neglect our own indigenous local languages because they are also rich with imagery. And we should do more reading and research around our own history, around our own evolution as a continent, the stages that we've been through, and some of the aspects of our past that is glorious and need to be shared. We need to do that. We need to be educated ourselves
Yes.
so that we can share with our children and the coming generations. We need to pass on that heritage.
So, Trinity Driving School says, great words. This is an enlightenment great show. Mr. Joseph Yate also said, we need to tell them our history, our glorious past. So, thank you, all listeners out there. We've got 2 minutes before we finish. Mr. Mayor, what are some of, I know you've really shared a lot of things, nurturing, making sure our children feel self worth, having assertiveness, and being bold, courageous to do most of the things. What else for the 2 minutes before we finish? What else can you really say so that people can take away and really start doing the helping?
Just to add to it, let's take an interest in the well-being and welfare of our kids. Let's believe in them. Let's not give them up. Let us have high expectations of them and support their aspirations and give them the space to flourish and to grow and to develop confidence and positive image and self-esteem and resilience. That's key, resilience, because in this life we all encounter adversity at one point or another, but we need the resilience to be able to bounce back and overcome and take our place.
Great. So tonight is been really awesome. Our Black children having identity crisis in the United Kingdom. And Mr. Mayor has shown us what identity crisis, what crisis are they facing. And some of the crises are due to our parenting skills. We need to look at that. We need to look at where we are coming from, our rich history, really nurture our children to be the best version of themselves. Really help our children, not give up on our children, but also let them know that they've got stuff that they can do. So tonight been awesome. Mr. Mayor, I would just like to thank you so much for joining Party Development Hour tonight and also on WhatsApp Radio. We will definitely have you back for you to help us. So thank you so much for your help.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you so much. And thank you, all my listeners out there, Mr. Joseph Yarte, Miss VYD, and Trinity Driving School, and also Monica Radio and Laxo Hans. Thank you all for your comments, lovely comments, and thank you for everything. We will be back next week by God's grace. Have a very good evening and bless you all. Bye.
Right.
Yeah.